What's up, guys? Okay, so we're going to do a video here on a tool that I use quite often for managing my Kubernetes clusters that I'm responsible for. That would be like the ones inside my home lab, as well as all the clusters at my office, my day-to-day job. So what I want to show you is just real quick how to install it. It is actually pretty easy to do. You have a choice of using you can download the source and compile it yourself, or you can use some kind of like package manager like Brew to install it. And so in this case, we're actually going to use Brew. And I just personally like Brew because you can get other packages through Brew as well. So we're just going to go ahead and first start with installing Brew, and then we're going to install K9S, and then we're going to go through and play around with K9S and just kind of show you what it looks like connected to my Kubernetes cluster in my environment. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with Homebrew. So Homebrew is brew.sh, and you want to install Homebrew. You just copy this command here, and we're going to paste it in the command line. Now, you don't want to run it as sudo, and it'll tell you that, or run it as root, because I guess it wants to do some stuff in your user profile as well as globally with the sudo command. You can kind of see that when it runs. So it does ask for my root account, or my, I guess, sudo. It's not my root account. It's sudoing as root as my standard user. Anyhow, so I type in my password for that, and then it's going to tell me what it's going to do. We're going to go ahead and let it just run through that, and it'll install Homebrew, or Linux Brew, whatever you want to call it. Brew the coffee. Updating Homebrew. I don't remember exactly how long this takes, honestly. Oh, it's done. Okay, so then what you want to do is it's suggesting that you run these commands here to put it into your path statement so that Brew is accessible. So I'm going to just go ahead and select that, block it, copy it by right-clicking on it, and then right-clicking again to paste it. And we're going to go ahead and run that, and it runs just fine. So here's an interesting thing I did want to show you. I kind of want to get... so I've been trying to get my team to do a lot of AI-related things, or at least use it from a chat perspective for asking questions and just like getting you guidance on how to do things. It's a fantastic tool. So I just want to throw a quick plug in here for that. So if you don't use AI today, I highly suggest you start. ChatGPT is really good. I personally like Grok. That's just the one that I use. I got the beta as part of my Twitter subscription, or X subscription, I guess. But now I think it's available. Grok 2 is available to everybody. They should be releasing Grok 3 at some point pretty soon. But the reason I'm mentioning is because if you get commands like this, and you're like, man, what does that do? Like, I don't know exactly what that's doing. You can actually take and copy this if you wanted. You can come into Grok and you could paste it like this and say, can you explain to me what this command is doing? And it'll go through that command. It'll kind of break it down for you and give you the exact details of what the command is. Now, there's a caveat here. AI is not perfect, but it's pretty dang good. And so it should give you really good idea of what it's doing. I would say it's above 90% accurate, depending on how you what you're asking and how you ask it. And so obviously everything in AI, you should take it with that little grain of salt there, and use your best, all of your knowledge and your best ability to decipher it and make the best decision there. But for the most part, it's pretty good at deciphering at least programming related stuff, and anything in the text space is very good at. All right, so just want to do a quick plug there for that. Okay, so now that we've got Brew installed, we're going to go ahead and install K9S. Now, if you go to the K9S CLI.io, which is their website, Kubernetes CLI to manage your clusters in style. That's pretty rad. But it says to install Brew this way. Now, I'm on an Ubuntu system, Ubuntu 24, and LTS 24. And if I install it this way, which we'll go ahead and run this, it's funny because it actually comes up, installs like a bunch of different things. But at the end of all of this work that it's doing, it comes back and says that you have to install it from source. And I think that's kind of odd that on their site, they give you this command that says this is how you install in Linux, but it doesn't work in Ubuntu. So maybe this works in other Linux distros. I don't know the answer to that one. Maybe it's just Ubuntu 24 LTS. I honestly don't know. But the weird part about it is that you just don't specify derailed /K9S/K9S. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to type this command again without all this prefix stuff here and just say K9S. So you can see here it says downloading from derailed, and it says the following formula cannot be installed from bottle and must be built from source. Install Clang or run brew install GCC. So I think if I run brew install GCC, I believe it'll tell me that it's already there. I could be wrong. It did on the example system that I ran this on prior to doing this video. But we're going to go ahead and just say brew install K9S and see what it does. And maybe I'll be right, maybe I'll be wrong. But it must be something to do with the word. I don't honestly know what's happening there, to be completely frank. Something to do with derailed. Doesn't install. But if you just say brew install K9S, it goes ahead and gets, I guess, something from the Homebrew repository instead of directly from derailed, and installs it successfully. Now, maybe it's not the latest version of K9S. I don't know what the actual latest version is here. We can go to the releases page. And if we go to the release, it says it's 32.7. So that's the latest. All right. So now if I say, first I want to just show you that I have connectivity to my Kubernetes cluster. So we'll say kubectl get nodes. And you'll see those are my nodes. They're pretty old. I've had them around for a while. I'll do a video on how I built this. This is built with Rancher. So this is a Rancher Kubernetes cluster, not like the Kubernetes clusters I've been using or showing you in the videos. I did a Rancher build instead. And I'll show you, I'll make a video on Rancher here in the near future, because I personally like Rancher. I think it's a great product. You can use the open source version, which is what I use. And it's really solid. And it gives you a really nice interface as well. So like you can see this cluster here. This is Rancher for my home cluster. And it gives you some good visuals. It's a web interface behind it, but it's more than just that. It's the entire management system of Kubernetes. So it's got some really cool benefits. But anyhow, I just wanted to show you. It is running a fairly new version. Rancher manages this version for me. I just select the latest supported version from their platform, and then it upgrades them. So those are my nodes. So if I type in K9S, it should use the current context that I'm currently in. So I say that because with Kubernetes in the kube config file, you can technically have a bunch of different contexts, and you can select between them. So if you have a bunch of different Kubernetes clusters, you could select between those clusters, and then when you run kubectl, it's doing whatever your current context is. So I did kubectl get nodes. It shows my current context, which are these 3 nodes from my cluster. So when I run K9S, it's going to give me the same thing. So here's the K9S interface. It's kind of old school feeling, like if you've been around since the old non-GUI days. Like when I grew up, I did a lot of DOS stuff, and so interfaces look just like this in DOS. And it just starts out connected to the Kubernetes cluster. You can see like the cluster and the context up here. The user that's configured with that cluster, etc. Your Kubernetes version, your K8s version, CPU and memory stats, and then pods in the default namespace. So if you want to see all namespaces, you could just hit 0 for all, and it'll show every running pod on that cluster. And then using the arrow keys, you can select them. So like if you wanted to look at this GitLab runner, you could push enter on it, and you can see here's the container for it. It's got 37 restarts. You can see like if you go to enter on it, or I think L is the same, like enter and L I think do the same thing in this case. It's the logs for it, so it shows me all the logs for that container. And then you can hit escape and it'll back you back out. If you want to change, so since we were talking about contexts and different clusters, if you want to change contexts, basically what you do is just like in VI, I'm going to hit the colon, so shift colon key next to my enter key, right? The 2 dots, one on top of the other. And it puts a prompt up here. You can see me typing. And so if I were to say context, it'll actually show you the context I've got here. So what I have, and this is just the way that Rancher does it when you download the kube config, it gives you the cluster as well as the nodes that are that have the master designation on them. So that is like the control plane and the etcd processes. So it gives it as a separate. It's technically the same cluster. It's just the individual node you're connecting right to it instead of to Rancher. Anyhow, so you can have you can select multiple clusters that way. You can also say colon namespace, and you can tab complete these or just push enter, and it'll give you all the namespaces. So then you can go look at namespaces, and if you push enter on a namespace, like let's say we go down to kube system, it should show you all the pods in the kube system namespace. You can see kube system there. And so you can see I've got Calico running and Core DNS and Metrics server, and then a bunch of jobs that just ran and they completed successfully. So you can obviously go back to 0 again. It'll show you all pods again because you're in the pods interface, right? We're looking at pods. So if I hit 0, it shows me all namespaces for pods. So if I want to go back and look at my namespaces again, namespace, and I can pick like GitLab. And there's my one GitLab runner. So these are running pods. You can get to other resource types, like you could say deploy and tab complete to deployment. And it'll show you all the deployments. Oh, that's really hard to read, but you can see the GitLab runner one there. So that deployment is currently running. It says 1 of 1 ready because that's what the deployment is. So if I were to, and you can see the option up here, you can see this YAML. So this YAML will let me hit, if I hit Y, it'll show me the actual kube definition for that deployment. And if the deployment has problems, generally it shows you some information down here in this status section for maybe why the deployment's not starting or something like that. But there's a lot of good info in here. You can see all kinds of stuff about like what it's connecting to, my home Git server. This is my GitLab runner for my Git that I've got internal, and it just does my run jobs for me. So if we escape out of this, and let's say we hit 0, it shows me all deployments. So these are every deployment in my kube system. So you can see I got smoke ping and an SMTP relay, etc. So those are all my deployments. You can do other things like daemon sets. So if we look at all the daemon sets, and this is all daemon sets across all namespaces, you can see that because the namespace is cattle system or kube system. So these are all my daemon sets. You could go to secrets. You can look at all your secrets. It shows every secret out there that's in my Kubernetes environment. What's another common one that you would do? You could see, I don't think I've got any PVs, but you could look at PVs. Oh, I do. Smoke ping. That's right. Some smoke ping mounts an NFS volume, so you can look at the PVs, and you could say PVC, which is the persistent volume claims, and you can see a little bit about them. If you drill into one, it should show you some info that's useful. Yeah, you can see kind of what it's used by. So this would be, I believe, the pod that's currently using that PVC. I think you can hit Y on these. You can hit Y, and you can look at the YAML config for, or the spec for that. So the kind is persistent volume claim, and you can see the spec. You can see somewhere in here it should say, oh, I don't know what I'm looking for. I was looking for the piece where it says like how it defines which pod or whatever grabs the claim. That's probably in a different spot. All right, so basically, the K9S is a fantastic tool. I use it all day long, including Rancher. I use either one of these. One last thing I wanted to show you was, and you can drill through this and play with it yourself, but two things you can do, actually, two last things. One, over to this My Smoke Ping, and you edit this. You can change replicas if you want. It would be a perfect example. We do this all the time. So you could come over here and edit this replicas to like 2 or 3 or how many ever you might need, and it'll change that deployment immediately, and Kubernetes will go and deploy 2 pods instead of 1 pod for this deployment. I'm not going to save that and run it because the reality is I don't need to do that. So plus I'm not really sure what that would do for my Smoke Ping, because Smoke Ping's got NFS mounts, and so do I really want multiple pods? Just depends on the deployment you have. The other thing I wanted to show you was that if there's an issue with something and you need to do a rolling restart means restart a pod, like restart the deployment, but you do it by bringing up a new pod to then terminate the old pod. So it becomes like this transition of the new pod comes up, hits a running state, and then they terminate the old one, and all the traffic now goes to the new pod. So if I were to hit R on this and I say want to restart, and I'd say yes, you should be able to see, ooh, that did not work as I thought it would. See, that should have said ready. It's terminating. So that's a deployment setting, I believe. Maybe this was not a good example because you can't have more than 1 pod running in Smoke Ping. Back to the comment I was making earlier. Smoke Ping makes NFS mounts, so that's a bad example. So let's go ahead and roll restart, maybe like the Istio, because I don't believe it uses Istio-D or Kali. Let's do Kiali rather. Let's do a rolling restart of this. It should say container creating. Oh, that one's not a good example either. How about the SMTP relay? There you go. That's what I'm looking for. You see the running here and the terminating. So it started up a new one. Once it hit running state, it then deleted the old one. Anyhow, that's just common core common Kubernetes type things. It's not necessarily related to K9S. I just wanted to show you can do rolling restarts if the deployment supports it in K9S, and just that this is a fantastic tool. So if you haven't used it for Kubernetes management or any of your Kubernetes lab environment that you've been building, this is a great tool for working with Kubernetes from the CLI. It doesn't require anything really to get not much installed, and it gives you great insight in your Kubernetes cluster. All right, so I hope that was helpful for you guys. Look forward to the next videos. I'll probably do one on Rancher here in the near future. Thanks.